All right, everyone. Can everyone hear me before we get started? Louder? Hopefully there's a way to make this louder. Is that good? All right. So I have 4 questions that were sent in to begin with, and I'm just going to start with those. I'm following the navigation at the top of my screen, use breadcrumbs. If you're looking at what I'm doing, I'll ask you to please not use the same ID that I'm using, because if we're both using the same ID, or if all of us are using the same ID, that's going to cause some problems, I think, with saving the data if we're all changing the same person's information at the same time. So I'm going to start off just going down the line of questions that were initially sent in, and then we'll go from there. The first question is basically, how do we accomplish assigning advisors as well as removing students off of my advisor listing? So if you know a student that you want to associate to you, you can search by their ID, which is their Catalyst ID. You'll also see that listed as MPL ID. You can search by the campus ID, which is going to be your M number. Or if you don't know either of those, you can try the last name, first name search. So I'll just look for a student that I know is active. Or at least was recently active. So by searching for that student, there's only one in the system, so it automatically brings you to her information. We'll see there's 5 effective dated rows here, and it's going to show us the most recent effective date, so October 5th, 2016. If you wanted to, you could cycle backwards and see different effective dates and what information was on those. And you can always use first and last to go to the first row and the last row up here at the top. So on this row, 10/5/2016, you'll notice that there's only one row underneath it. So that means that only David Gillespie is currently assigned to as an advisor. The way that UL security is set up, you would have to add a new row here. So click this plus button. And you'll see that it automatically puts in today's date as the effective date. In most cases, I think that's what people will be using. You can change this if you want, but you cannot move this date to an earlier date than the previous row. So for example, I could not change this row to 10/4/2016, but I could change it to 10/6/2016. So just to demonstrate, I'll change it to that date. If I wanted to then add myself, I would click the plus button on the second tier. So the blue bars are going to be almost like your tiers or your levels within the table. So the first blue bar signifies your first level, and the second blue bar signifies your second level. Let's say that I am a Claremont advisor and the career. So I know that the career is going to be undergrad. So I can just go ahead and type that in. Alternatively, I could select using the magnifying glass, and it would just show me the option that's available for the student. Again, using the magnifying glass, I can see the programs that are available for the student. And this pulls from the student's CPP stacks. So there are career program plan stacks that you should also be able to see in the academics tab in the advisor center. I think it's important to note that you will see maybe discontinued or completed programs. If you select one of those, they're not going to show up in your list of my advisees in the advisor center. You want to really pick one that's active. And the statuses here are based on the date that you choose or that's selected as the effective date. So say this certificate may have been completed. We change this 12/19/2016. No, she still has that as active as that date. But either way, let's select the active program, 15 BAC. I really recommend leaving plan blank. It doesn't necessarily provide more information to the student, and it could create a few more problems with making associations or keeping them in your My Advisees list moving forward. If you know your advisor ID, then you can go ahead and type that in there. If you don't, you can click the search button, and then you can search by anything that's listed above. And then just click select, and now you have the advisor ID. So when I save this, I go to my new window and I go out to my My Advisees. I should have one person listed here. So now she's on my list. If I click view all, I'll see that David Gillespie is also still advisor as of this date. So that means that we are both the student's advisor as of that date. And really, you could go through and add any number that you want underneath here. You can add up to as many as you want. I haven't seen a number that would stop, but everybody here would then be active as of that date. Now, for the purposes of this demonstration, I have the ability to correct history, just so it's easier for me to demonstrate things. You all don't have that ability. So once you click save after making your changes, you would have to change the effective date, or actually add a new effective dated row to make any changes after the fact. I'll move on to the second question and just hopefully hit on more pieces as we go. Can I disassociate students from other colleges or programs or advisors if they switch into my program, or does something else need to happen? I would say that's kind of a twofold question. One, yes, you have the ability to do that. Two, do you know that that's the right thing to do, or should you be doing that? So for example, if someone is still pursuing that degree, the second degree, rather than doing a full switch, but maybe adding on, that's a question that I think needs to be answered before making the disassociation. I would say typically maybe you just want to do the add, but I think that's more should be left up to the colleges and programs to determine amongst one another what the best way to manage that process would be. Maybe if you have a college that switches a lot of students into another college's population, then you can talk and figure out how that should be handled or managed in the best way. So if we went back, so I'm going to delete what I just did. So if I wanted to do that, what I would do is I'm going to add this new row, and let's say I just want to make it as of the 7th of October. If I wanted to remove David and make it only be myself after I've made that agreement with ANS, I could do a few things. I could add a new row and then add in all of my information. That's going to take a little bit longer. The other thing I could do is just change the information that's on the existing row. So I'm the Claremont advisor. I know it's still undergrad, but I'm going to select another program. So I'm going to say I'm the certificate advisor. And once you change something within this portion of it, it'll blank out what was selected before, but then I can just go in and grab myself again. And see, now there's only one row, so it's 1 of 1 here. So I'm going to be the only person for this student. So I've effectively removed David. The history of him being the student's advisor is still on the previous row, but on the current row, I have removed him, and it's only the third question. Clarify how to associate yourself when multiple other advisors are already associated with the student. Protocol for when it is appropriate to remove another advisor from the student. So one thing that I think we run into quite a bit is advisors like athletics or maybe national competitive boards that are not connected to a program. Sometimes they accidentally get removed because the program blanks out when you carry over the row. Back and see. Okay. So I'm going to make some changes here just to see what we've got going on. And I'm not in production of Catalyst. I'm in a test environment, so I don't think I'm just changing a bunch of stuff. So I think sometimes what we'll see is if a student's information looks like this, and what I'm going to do is change this to let me save it. So I'm staging a situation that we may run into frequently. The student has a 15-back program that's active with an advisor. They have an 18-back program that is not active because it's completed with the advisor. And an athletic advisor is also associated to the 18-back program. But really in this scenario, the 18-back advisor is going to be removed because that's a completed program. And because this table requires the program to be populated, we have one in here for the athletics advisor. Now when we add a new effective dated row, because that program is not active as of the date that it automatically inserts when we add the new row, it blanks out the information as of that point. So if they also were not active in the undergrad career anymore, this would also be blanked out. But since they still have an active undergrad career, they also have a 15 back that's active, that information remains the same when it's carried over. So what we would need to account for then in this situation is, should we remove this row where this CH advisor was? My guess would be probably, since the program was completed. But again, I think that should be worked out between the colleges. program. So for today's purposes, I'm just going to delete that. We still have this athletic advisor row. So a lot of times what you'll see is if you view one and you try and save, it's going to give you this error that you have to have an advisor or committee specified before you can save it. And I think it creates confusion because people just see one box here, but really it says 1 and 2. So if you click view all, or if you click the arrow over, you would see this second row. And what I would suggest in that situation is just going to the previous row and grabbing the information. And then using the program that you know is active, especially for things like athletics and nationally competitive awards, that the program doesn't really matter. It's more so just the association between the advisor and the student. And I just paste that ID right in there, and it brings the advisor in. And if I save that now, I've completed that transaction. I think that addressed the fourth question as well. How to associate someone who has 2 advisors, not losing their program advisor, but being able to supplement with another advisor, i.e. honors or athletics, etc. So in this case, say we didn't save this yet and we're still making our changes, you could add in another row, and if you know there's also a nationally competitive awards advisor, you can grab that role and then go ahead and put in the advisor information. And now we have all 3 advisors. There are some cases where when you search for an advisor, they won't appear. And that's because they have to exist in another table as an advisor prior to being able to be selected here. Part of our challenge with that is in HR, there's not a consistent way that users who would be coded as advisors, or that would be whose job is partially or all advising, they're not all coded the same way in HR. So for the most part, it's kind of on a one-off basis as we go. So if you know there's going to be people that need to have advisor associations made, just let us know, and we'll make sure they're added to that table beforehand. I think that pretty much takes care of the questions that were already asked. I think that there may have been other questions asked during the session. If you have other questions, maybe you can go ahead and type those into Jordan.